The first casualty of war is truth, and we are seeing the epitome of that as the mainstream media in their bloodthirsty push for global war is denying people two sides of the story that you deserve to hear about the latest information between the proxy war that's happening between the United States and Russia inside of Syria. And in this video, we're going to talk about that plus a lot more, including Russia's response to the latest US airstrikes, the repercussions of this, and where this will go in the not so bright future between Russia and the United States. As we're speaking right now, we're getting the first images after the impacts from US missiles that rained down on a Syrian airbase, which we're finding out that in fact Russian personnel were at that base. From the Prime Minister of Russia, Medvedev, was that US missiles came within an inch of clashing with Russian forces last night. Of course, creating an unwise situation, bringing us to the brink of a full all-out world war between Russia and the United States. On the heels of the US airstrikes, the Russians are suspending an agreement that prevents direct conflict with American forces, suspending a 2005 deal with the United States aimed at avoiding mid-air collisions in Syria. The Russians are saying now the risk of such a collision couldn't be any higher, and therefore explaining their suspension of this deal. Russia at the same time is upgrading its Syrian air defenses. The Russian S-400 missile defense shield has been put in combat readiness, as Russian warships have been armed and sent towards the direction of the US destroyers that launched last night's Syrian airstrikes. Russian President Vladimir Putin has said that the Syrian strikes last night have crippled US-Russian relations, and the Russian Prime Minister told Trump that he is one step away from a complete war with Russia. Now, in the American mainstream media, we are getting one side of this conflict, one story from the US administration, from the deep state that works with the mainstream media, telling everyone that this was a justification for the chemical weapons attack that the Syrian government committed against its own people, justifying this conflict. But the Russians have a completely other side of this story that you deserve to hear. They are saying that the US justification is completely untrue, saying that the scenario of the Syrian government using chemical warfare is highly implausible, and pointing the fingers at Syrian rebels, which brings into question who really used chemical weapons inside of Syria. The argument that the Russians are using was that Syrian rebels did have chemical weapons, and when the Syrian government was flying airstrikes, it hit one of the depots that held these chemical weapons, therefore exploding them and releasing the chemical weapons that the rebels had, blaming this entire incident on a mishap, saying that the Syrian government did not use chemical weapons against its own people. And to me, that argument is plausible, since we found out in 2013 that the chemical weapons that were used in Syria before were used by the Syrian rebel groups. Even UN officials came out after investigating the initial 2013 Syrian chemical weapons incident, which by in fact Barack Obama tried to use as a justification to launch a bombing campaign against the Syrian government, but couldn't. And in that incident, a lot of the evidence pointed to the rebels being the ones who actually used chemical weapons, leaving many people to say that the Syrian gas attack was an Al-Qaeda false flag, and that Trump should have waited, investigated, found out exactly what happened, and not bombed the Syrian government, but should have gone after ISIS and Al-Qaeda. The Russians are even going as far as to blaming Donald Trump for planning missile strikes before the chemical attack. Putin's spokesperson Dmitry Peskov dismissed Trump's explanation for the attack, stating that Donald Trump was simply looking for an excuse to jump into the conflict. We're also finding out that one of the doctors who was a key witness to this latest chemical attack was actually put on trial for terrorism in the United Kingdom. And this is the man who provided evidence of this gas attack, who is now being treated as a committed jihadist by the UK government. But after all this, the United States military is not backing down, as they are looking into whether Russia participated in a Syrian chemical weapons attack, shifting the blame away from them and starting more heated rhetoric towards Russia. And after yesterday's attack, we are seeing the battle lines drawn, as Donald Trump has aligned himself with neoconservatives, the mainstream media, Hillary Clinton, Saudi Arabia, Israel, ISIS, Turkey, and Al-Qaeda, while at the same time facing off and making enemies out of Syria, Iran, Yemen, Russia, China, Shia Muslims fighting terrorists, and real alternative media. The lines have been drawn. This conflict is escalated. Many people are saying that this will lead to an entire world war between these two super global world powers who are involved in a proxy war officially, have been under Barack Obama, and now escalating that under President Trump, which is making everyone fear the worst. But to be honest, from my expertise and investigating this for a number of years now, what this ultimately will lead to is a very tense standoff between Russia and the United States, since both countries understand if there was a head-to-head conflict between these two nations, it would mean nuclear holocaust for the entire world. Russia's foreign policy is extremely unpredictable, and Donald Trump is playing a game that is very dangerous, that won't be solved anytime soon, and from what I see, create more proxy wars all over the world. For more news and analysis, don't forget to go to wearechange.org and support us on wearechange.org/donate. We are a news organization funded by you, the viewers, and even $1 means the world to us, especially during these key critical times, so we could be here for you reporting the news that no one else will. Thank you again so much for watching. Subscribe, stay tuned.